The military base was quiet at sunrise, the air thick with dust, the hangar filled with machines that looked more like ghosts than weapons. Then the sirens screamed, and the peace broke into chaos. Enemy fighters had crossed the border, fast. Invisible, deadly. The control tower shouted orders. Pilots rushed to their jets. Mechanics shouted back that nothing was ready. Confusion spread like fire. Fear sat heavy in the air. In the far corner of the hangar stood an old fighter jet. The JX-14, covered in dust, its paint faded, its frame worn. Younger pilots laughed at it, calling it the flying coffin. They said it belonged in a museum, not on a runway. Nobody gave it a second look, except for one person, Anya Hallberg, a woman in her mid-30s, hair tied low, small frame, coveralls stained with grease. She was a mechanic, not a pilot. Her hands smelled of oil and metal. She lived in the shadows of the hangar, unseen, unimportant, forgotten. She had once been a pilot, years ago, with a call sign that carried weight, Red Mark. But she had left the sky after one mistake, one wrong decision that cost a wingman his life. Guilt buried her. Silence became her armor. Now she fixed aircraft for others, never for herself. The attack came fast. Enemy jets screamed overhead, their stealth systems jamming every radar. Missiles dropped with deadly accuracy. 3 modern jets were destroyed in the first wave. Fire lit the horizon. Pilots ejected, but barely survived. The base shook with panic. The enemy circled for another strike. Control demanded every working jet, but the hangar was a graveyard. Nothing was ready. The mechanic shouted 30 minutes at least. Too long. Far too long. The radio crackled. A desperate voice cut through the static. "This is Recon 7. Enemy fighter closing fast. 2 minutes until missile range. Request immediate support. Repeat. Request immediate support." In the command room, officers shouted, slammed fists on tables. No aircraft could launch in time. It was hopeless. The screen showed the enemy closing in, second by second. A pilot about to die. Anya stood frozen by her workbench, her heart pounding, her eyes drifting to the forgotten jet. The JX-14, old, slow, but alive in her memory. She had maintained it for years. Every bolt, every switch, every wire. She knew its voice, its heartbeat. It was her secret companion in silence. She had kept it perfect, though nobody cared, though it was retired. Now she felt it calling her. She walked toward it, her boots heavy against the hangar floor. Lieutenant Morrison, a young officer, stepped in her way. "Ma'am, you are not authorized. You are not on the roster." His face was pale, his voice nervous. But Anya looked past him, eyes locked on the radar screen. The enemy was seconds away from killing the reconnaissance pilot. She whispered, "If no one takes off, someone is going to die." Then she climbed into the cockpit. Her hands moved without thought, flipping switches, pulling levers, the old systems coming alive. The engines coughed, then roared. Dust scattered in the hangar. Every mechanic turned to stare. They knew those movements, precise, practiced, like someone who had flown 1,000 times. Sergeant Mills, the oldest chief in the room, whispered, "She moves like Red Mark." The words spread like fire. Red Mark, the legend who never lost a fight, who was thought to be gone forever. Control tower shouted through the speakers, "JX-14, you are not cleared. Return to hangar. Negative clearance." Anya kept rolling. The jet growled forward. Nobody dared to stop her, not when every second mattered. Outside, the runway stretched empty, smoke rising in the distance. Enemy fighters circling overhead like hawks. The base held its breath. Anya tightened her straps, her fingers wrapped around the old stick, her pulse steady now. The fear washed away, replaced with instinct, with memory. This jet was slower, weaker, but it was hers. She trusted it like she trusted her own body. The engine screamed, the ground shook, and then the JX-14 lifted into the sky. Inside the control center, officers leaned over screens, eyes wide. The radar showed a single slow aircraft climbing into the path of the enemy. Squadron leader Harrison muttered, "She will never make it. She is flying into death." But Mills whispered again, Look at her angle, look at her climb, she knows what she is doing. The enemy fighter locked. Onto Recon 7. Missile ready, one more breath until fire. Then a new voice cut through the radio. Calm, steady, this is Red Mark. I am on your 6 when I say brake. You brake hard left and dive. The reconnaissance pilot froze, disbelief flooding his words. Red Mark, but you were supposed to be dead. Anya's voice stayed calm. Reports of my death were exaggerated. Now get ready. The hangar fell silent. The control tower fell silent. Every soldier froze at the sound of her call sign. The legend was alive. The forgotten mechanic was no mechanic at all. She was a pilot reborn. And she was about to face the deadliest enemy in the sky. The JX-14 climbed higher. The sun burning behind its wings. The base held its breath. The fight had not begun yet, but everyone knew. History was about to be rewritten by the dustiest jet in the hangar, and by the woman no one had believed in. The sky opened wide around her, blue and endless. The roar of the engines shaking the old frame of the JX-14. Anya held the stick steady, her eyes locked on the radar screen. The enemy fighter moved like lightning, sleek, fast, almost invisible. Built to kill with machines and numbers, not with instinct, not with heart. In the control room, everyone stared at the glowing dots. One was Recon 7, crawling slow, hunted. The other was the enemy jet, closing in quick. And then a third dot appeared, the forgotten JX-14. The dot nobody expected to see. Squadron leader Harrison leaned close to the screen. His voice low. She is going to be destroyed. The old machine cannot survive a fight like this. But Sergeant. Mills shook his head, his eyes burning. Watch her, just watch her. The enemy pilot smiled inside his helmet. To him the fight was already over. He saw an old jet climbing toward him. Weak, slow, clumsy, a museum piece. He relaxed. The kill would be easy. The only question was whether to fire a missile or just play with his prey. Arrogance filled his blood. He had never faced anyone like her. Anya's voice came steady through the radio. Red Mark to Recon 7. Brake left and dive when I give the word. The reconnaissance pilot's voice shook, but he trusted her. Whoever she was, whatever ghost had returned to the sky, he believed she felt the weight of her past pressing against her chest, the memory of the wingman she had lost 6 years ago, the shame that drove her to silence. But guilt was no longer in control. Now there was only focus, only the old instincts that had never left her. Her hands moved with memory, not with fear. Every switch, every pull, every turn. Like music from the past, the enemy jet lined up for a kill. The lock beeped in his ears. The computer confirmed the target. One press of a button and Recon 7 would be fire and ash. Anya pulled the stick hard. The JX-14 groaned. The frame shivered. But it climbed sharp into the sun, vanishing from the enemy radar. The stealth systems could not read her position. She was above him now. Hidden in the lighting, the base. The soldiers gasped. The old fighter had disappeared from the enemies targeting system. Harrison leaned forward, his voice almost disbelief. She is flying by instinct. She is not using machines. She is using her own mind, Mills whispered. That is what flying used to be. That is Red Mark. The enemy pilot cursed, confused. He searched the skies, sensors flashing, systems failing to locate her. This was not in his training. This was not in his manuals. He had always trusted his machine, and his machine had never lied. But now the old jet, the forgotten jet, had become invisible, and fear crept into his chest. Anya lined her angle, her hands steady, her eyes narrow. The sun at her back, the enemy below. The moment was close. She could feel it in her bones. She pressed the radio. Now Recon 7, brake left and dive. The reconnaissance pilot obeyed instantly, his jet dropping sharp. The enemy pilot blinked, shocked. His target gone from his lock, and then Anya fell from the sky. The JX-14 dove with the sun burning bright behind it. The enemy fighter blind, his sensors overwhelmed. Anya aimed not with a computer, not with a target lock, but with her own eyes, her own timing, her own instinct. She fired a single unguided missile, a weapon most called useless, outdated. But in her hands it was enough. The missile struck the enemy jet's engine. Fire burst, metal screamed. The stealth fighter spun downward, trailing black smoke, the pilot ejecting as his machine burned through the clouds. The base fell into silence. Screens showed the impossible. The old jet had defeated the most advanced fighter in the sky. The control tower froze, voices stuck in throats. Then Colonel Davis whispered. The only person who could make that shot was Red Mark, and his hands trembled because the legend had returned. The ghost was alive. Anya's voice filled the radio, calm, steady, professional. Control, this is Red Mark. Threat eliminated. Recon 7 is clear to return to base. The words echoed, no celebration, no pride, only duty. Only the truth that lives were saved, because she stepped up when no one else could. Inside the hangar, young pilots stared at each other, their faces pale. They had mocked the old jet. They had mocked the woman who wiped grease from wings. Now she had done what none of them could. She had flown the coffin into victory, and the legend was real before their eyes. In the sky, Anya breathed steady, her eyes soft, her voice low. I was supposed to be dead, but dying is not the same as being gone. Today I could not let someone else die because I was afraid, because I was forgotten. The JX-14 hummed under her touch. A machine no one wanted, now reborn as a weapon of skill. A symbol of survival back at the base. Harrison whispered, she is not fighting fair. She is rewriting the rules, and Mills smiled through tears. She never needed machines to fight. She only needed herself, and the sky that always belonged to her. The dustiest jet in the hangar had become the deadliest weapon, and the forgotten woman had become the hero no one expected. But the fight was not over, because now everyone was asking the same question. What would happen when she landed? What would happen when the legend returned home? The roar of the JX-14 faded as Anya guided the old jet back toward the base. The battlefield behind her filled with smoke and silence. The enemy fighter was gone. Recon 7 was safe, and the sky that had been filled with fear was now quiet again. In the control tower, men and women leaned close to the glass, their eyes following the single dot returning on the radar, disbelief written on every face as she descended. The runway stretched out in front of her, glowing faintly under the morning sun. Voices whispered in awe that landing will be her last. The old jet will fall apart. She will crash. But Sergeant Mills shook his head slowly. No, watch her. She still remembers. She never forgot. The JX-14 touched down with a soft screech of wheels. Steady, perfect, smooth like silk. The kind of landing only a master could make, not a computer, not a machine. Only a human hand filled with memory and care engines. Wound down. The hangar door opened wide. People ran out, young pilots, mechanics, officers, all rushing toward the dust-covered fighter, their voices full of wonder. She defeated the enemy. She saved the base. She brought back Red Mark, yet Anya stayed calm. She unbuckled the straps, lifted her helmet, her long brown hair falling loose around her face. She looked tired, not proud, not hungry for cheers, only tired. And quietly human. The younger pilots reached her first, eyes shining, voices tripping over one another. Ma'am, are you really Red Mark, the legend, the one from the stories, the one who never lost? Anya looked at them, her gaze soft, her voice low. I was someone who made a mistake. I let a teammate die. Today I just wanted to make sure no one else had to feel that same pain. The words carried heavy weight, and silence fell over the group, because none of them had ever heard a hero speak with such honesty. Then Squadron Leader Harrison stepped forward, his uniform neat, his face full of respect. Anya, what you did today saved us all. You are cleared for full pilot status again. Effective immediately. The squadron needs you. The country needs you. The sky needs you. His offer hung heavy, a gift, a chance to return to the glory she had lost. But Anya shook her head gently. No, I am needed here. These aircraft do not fix themselves. The pilots who fly them deserve to know their machines are perfect. My place is in the hangar. My duty is to make sure they all come home. The base grew quiet again, the pilots stunned. They could not understand why someone who flew like a legend would choose to remain a mechanic. But slowly they began to see. Slowly they began to respect her choice. Respect the truth that heroes do not always stand in the light. Sometimes they work in the shadows, holding everyone else up. A week later, the JX-14 was no longer called a coffin, no longer mocked or ignored. It sat proudly in the hangar with a new plaque fixed to its side. The wooden letters carved deep, old, quiet, and never abandons a wingman. Young pilots touched the plaque with reverence, whispering that the dusty jet had become the deadliest weapon, not because of its steel or engines, but because of the woman who flew it. Anya moved back to her corner of the hangar, back to her wrenches and wires. But things were different now. The young pilots came to her, not just with broken parts, but with questions about flying, about judgment, about instinct. She taught them that flying was not about the fastest speed or the newest computer. It was about trust, about responsibility, about knowing that every move you make carries the lives of others. Her lessons were simple but cut deeper than any textbook. The kind of wisdom that lives inside scars. Sergeant Mills watched her from across the hangar, his smile warm, his voice gentle. You know, Red Mark, you never really left. You only found another way to keep people safe. Anya looked up from the engine she was repairing, her hands steady, her eyes clear. Sometimes the most important job is not the one that gets the glory. It is the one that makes sure everyone else gets to return home safely. Her words lingered like truth carved in stone in the quiet hours. When the hangar was empty, Anya would place her hand on the JX-14's frame, feeling the cool metal beneath her palm. She did not see a coffin anymore. She saw a partner, a witness to her redemption, the proof that old does not mean useless, that mistakes do not mean the end. She had been forgotten. But when the world needed her, she rose again. And that was enough. The base had changed. The people had changed. And even the young pilots who once mocked the old machine began to understand. Technology is powerful, but technology alone does not win battles. It is the human spirit, the courage to rise, the instinct to protect, the will to sacrifice. Those are the real weapons, and they had seen it with their own eyes. Anya did not fly again, not because she could not, but because she chose a different sky. The sky of maintenance, the sky of patience, the sky where every bolt tightened, every wire checked, every system polished, meant another life returned safely. She did not need medals or titles. Her victory was quiet. Her legacy was in the engines that roared because she cared, in the pilots who survived because she refused to give up. The dustiest jet in the hangar had become the deadliest weapon, and the woman everyone overlooked had become the guide who reminded them all that true strength is not in machines, it is in people. And sometimes the quiet ones, the forgotten ones, are the ones who save the world when no one else dares to rise.